Morning, fellow zombies. It's 4:51 in the morning for Thursday, the 20th of April, 2023. We're John Sierra's in California. How you guys doing this morning? I should put this into the diary of the great named John Weaver situation here. I've been a track fan all my life. I have seen the original series, first reruns that came out on BBC, and fell in love with them. 3 seasons. And I kept watching the repeats over and over again. Every time they had a new series coming out, I'd watch the whole thing and then rewatch the series again and again and again. Sometimes I couldn't get into one particular series, but I tried. Helps when you have DVDs and streaming that you can actually rewatch them all again and remember. And usually the endings usually get to me because it means change, transition, loss, family. The latest series that they had regarding the old generation, not the old generation again, that would have been the first generation. No, Star Trek The Next Generation. They did their last. Several hours ago, just broadcasted to a lot of people. And mixed reactions, but a lot of fans were moved and touched over it, I suppose. And I was too. What I keep talking about on my channel that affects me more and more is the term and what it means and the implications of it. We have raised families, generations. I haven't. But a lot of generations have come, prospered. We like the idea of what one man was trying to tell us, and everyone will revert him as near cult-like God status. But some of the concepts he was talking about, we still had. We just never bothered to put some of the pieces into that particular format enough. Oh hell, we'd talk about Flash Gordon or Carbit or the other heroes of the old serials that fought against the cartoonish villains out there who threatened to destroy the universe. We didn't exactly count it on Horatio Hornblowers, but we did. Or a wagon train to the stars that they'd called Star Trek, with a Captain Horatio Hornblower at the helm. I was watching Picard and the series on how it was being done. And each season, you thought it was going to be the last. It's only 3 seasons long, but very short episodes. But even then, they tried to pack as much as they could. Paramount only goes so far. And whether or not they're going to get enough return out of it. And they will. They normally do. Seeing the series of the old generation in action one more time. Probably for the last time I'll see it on my own generation, my own lifetime. I remember seeing them the first or second year they came out. And Gene Roddenberry is still alive during that time. There was a convention out in Los Angeles in the airport Hilton. Old generation plus new generation, and mostly they're getting the new generation out there. A few of the older stars were hanging around, and it was interesting to see that. I remember Walter Koenig was talking with a few other people in a hallway just before I was about to get down in an elevator, actually an escalator, going home. And I remember I did this to him. And he goes, I know a very good doctor who can fix that for you. Perfect Chekhov accent on that one. It's like a memory I cherish a great deal. My brother was with me at the time. I didn't take a bus during that time. My brother drove me down there because he wanted to see it too. He wasn't a true science fiction fan, my brother. He tolerated it. He saw how much I was enthralled with it, so I learned how to tolerate my eccentricities. I guess he was there just to chase women. Me, I was there for the convention, the actors, the fans, the merchandise, the experience. That's what I was there for. I remember in the area that they were doing the signing, I'd gotten a few Polaroid pictures. I don't know where the hell I left them at. One of which was Curtis. And right next to him was Frakes. Frakes during that time was a bit arrogant, was a bit of an asshole, just not what he portrays on the screen. He really had an attitude, and he really turned me off. I mean, I appreciated the character, but looking at the guy itself left me a bad taste for decades. Some people thought he was nice, and other people thought he was an asshole. I hadn't had a chance during that time to see Dorn. I didn't. It would have been interesting to see Worf. Burton, I didn't see. It was only the two actors I only saw. So maybe they were going to be coming in a little bit later. And I'd already seen and had a little bit of an encounter with Patrick Stewart. Or, I'm sorry, Sir Patrick Stewart. I guess it was during that time when he was doing his one-man show during Christmas time, when he was doing the Christmas Carol, and he was narrator and Scrooge and stuff, and him dancing around talking about the characters in different formats. We saw him at the Wadsworth Theater. My brother and I had a problem with the Wadsworth Theater. We already left the valley. We already used the toilet. We had to empty out the bladder like crazy, but still had to empty out the bladder again. And they wouldn't allow us in because we just got in there just when they were starting the show. Everyone should have been in there, but we got there a little bit late. So we were going to be seeing the next portion. What it was going to be. We saw most of it. But my brother made a threat to the ticket holder and the guys at the door that if he didn't get in there, he was going to peel over him. They let him in there, let him use the restroom, and then he was fine. And we had to wait till it was our turn to get in there to find our seats. And then we found our seats and we watched the whole thing, and I was mesmerized. I think David enjoyed it too. I guess he was more satisfied by not peeing under the guys' shoes outside. But when Dave and I left, We saw the limousine just almost edging out. Instead of yelling and shouting, I just did this to him. Out of the roof hatch was his hand doing that back at me. Stuff like that, you wish you had camera phones during those days. It would have been nice. But that's a hell of a memory to have, I'll tell you that much. I missed the opportunity of meeting Gene Roddenberry. But I know about a decade later, I was at another convention out in Pasadena. And I met Jill Bear Roddenberry. She's class act all the way. Besides getting a few autographs from a few people, she was the one I really loved. Not on the all serious, but just the way she was. A real class act. Watching the last show, The Next Generation, so to speak, of Picard. The third season should have been The Next Generation or The Generation afterwards. They called the last show The Last Generation. Maybe. But they left some Easter eggs on that one. They should have continued it. I mean, they requested a shit in the Enterprise, and you have a new crew, and then you brought back Q. Come on, there's got to be something. The fans are going to be screaming and yelling their heads off over at Paramount Studios of getting that going. But watching all of it, when they were talking about family, it was breaking my heart. It was royally breaking my heart. And I was having an issue over it. Issue? Shit. Oh, she's using up Kleenex again. I'm looking at something that was meaningful something to me. It made me feel older than I thought it was. And more deeply connected to the older generations that are passing before our eyes. When they pass the torch to the next generation, and then the next one. DS9, the intermediary, Voyager trying to continue Enterprise, but different way. And then you had the Enterprise series itself. A lot of fans throughout the lifetime tried to write essays, stories, fanfics, anything and everything to describe what Star Trek meant to them. Everyone has different interpretations of what it means. What it means to be a particular fanatic or just a fan. And I tell you, it hurt like hell. It hurt like hell just watching all of it sometimes. Because these days it reminds me so much of a family that's not even funny. You have a crew that bonds with each other a great deal, that it becomes a family, not a crew. The last scene that they had in the show of Picard, The Last Generation, was the old scene that they put in there regarding the cast members doing the last show of the seventh season when it was bowing out. A poker game. For the older generation. But for the younger generation, he meets Q, John Delancey. That's a character right there. At one time, I had a picture of him, Polaroid. And then, a few years later, I went back to the same convention hall. He was signing autographs, and he signed a picture right over his face. I still have the picture, and I still have the digital images of it. I may take this thing off, but it doesn't mean I take off the emblem I was born with. I was born a Trekkie, and I'll die a Trekkie. I don't care about the damn terminology. I used to call myself a Trekker. I consider a Trekker did things in Star Trek. A Trekkie was just an enthusiast. Well, I'm an enthusiast. I didn't do much in Trek. I attended a few conventions. No, several conventions in my lifetime, but I stopped. I've also found out the extreme edges concerning about fandom, and I didn't like it. Some people really took it over the edge. Scared the hell out of me, pissed me off. And I vowed never to do it all over again. I even had a Trek show on radio canceled. I blamed myself for that one. I could also blame the host for the damn thing. It didn't matter. I'll never have an opportunity to apologize to her because the host died 20, 25 years ago. Somewhere I have information about the obituary of passage of her, Joyce Mason. She did talk Trek. Local station out of KIEV in Glendale. Then moved over to Cable Radio Network. And she was attracting a lot of people because of the co-hosts she had who were connected into the business. She was somewhat a force to be reckoned with. And I was just as gullible and as innocent as green during that time. And it tore me apart when I guess a lot of misgivings, a lot of miscommunications kind of screwed things over to where it no longer mattered. Being a fan, I got burned out. I got burned out on every damn fandom out there. Almost. Other fandoms that came up, I went a little overboard on some of those too. Too much. Way too much. But somewhere inside I still was a Trekkie. Regardless of whatever the hell I felt like. Seeing the shows and trying to emulate them. I guess maybe I was trying to fit into a niche that I really didn't understand. I should have a long time ago. These days, I haven't been to the conventions. I know they're basically the same. You have the larger audience rooms that'll do the maybe give or take. Some of the smaller side rooms, you'll have a little bit of a discussion boards with the writers or directors or whoever. The main action came on the merchandise floor, especially when they cordoned off areas for people to get autographs. And they lined up. They didn't want to see him in the audience. They wanted to see him in person, shake their hands, have experiences with their icon, pictures like crazy. Memorabilia of that was priceless. Memories just as so. A chance encounter, maybe a little bit of a side discussion if you're lucky enough. But the way fandom was, Get them in, get there, get them out fast when they're done. When they're done with the scheduling and stuff. A lot of stress being a superstar, I guess. And when you're a fan, you're just unpredictable. It should have been more predictable for me. The emotional outburst, actually, the emotions I was feeling about it in the first place. I didn't realize it at the time. I should have. I should have. Growing up as a young kid, growing up into a young man. Yeah, I do that to people a lot. Try doing this on both hands. So I'm working Mindy. And it became Nanu, Nanu. It was only until, what was it, a few decades ago I discovered that Nimoy was talking about this in his memoirs and books and interviews about where he got this from. He saw um, in synagogue how some of the rabbis and cantors, ones who actually be doing the benedictions, would do this to the people. And you were not allowed to look at the ones doing the benedictions, but he did. He had this reported. And he saw that and thought that'd be cool for a Vulcan sign. So it was born. Right out of Judaism. Didn't matter if you were Judaism, what faith you were. If you had a love of science fiction, you had a love of humanity, what it could do, where we're going, what the future we wanted to be. Then you were part of this direct culture. If you're for an interplanetary or intergalactic commingling of alien races, trying to better themselves, trying to explore the universe, and not trying to kill each other in the process, but trying to be accepting of each other's differences. You were part of the Trekkiism. You're a part of a vision that was shared by a lot of people. Well, they kept claiming for one guy, but I suppose Gene had his sources where he got it from. He got it where he got it from. And it just blew. I imagine if Christ was alive, Christ would probably have a field day with some of us fans. Maybe he would have appreciated Gene Roddenberry's vision, or maybe Gene got it from Christ, who knows, or from God. And if it happened that way, then cool. But if it didn't, well, then that's all right too. But it matters a great deal. It matters a great deal to me, though. I thought I was the only one inheriting his legacy, but to every fan that celebrated Star Trek in their own way was indeed a legacy, was indeed the progenitor and the inheritors of it all. We are Star Trek. We'd fall in love with the characters, we'd fall in love with the actors. We'd fall in love with every aspect of Star Trek. A culture, an idea, a mindset. They can wear the pins, but if you wore the pins, are you a Trekkie or are you not? or you just like to wear the pins. In different fandoms and different cultures, you wear the symbols because there's something about the idealism that you have behind it. Makes it that much more larger in life, shall we say. I guess I cried over this when I saw the episode. But for me as a griever, it's not just the ending of a season or an ending of a show. I mean, yeah, it's sad. But for me, it got more and more personal. Not just for, I'm not going to see these guys ever again except on screen all the time. No, and it's not, I won't be able to see them in the conventions, maybe or maybe not. But what it meant to me was family. That's the thing that drives it home for me. Us fans are different and unique. We have our own different personalities. And we come together to celebrate a fandom left and right. But sometimes, if we're lucky enough, we celebrate family. We see a crew, I'd see a family. And sometimes they would say that too. They would say that. That's why it was making me cry like crazy. That's why it was tearing me off left and right because my trigger word for my grieving is family. Anything related to it, no matter how remote, mattered a great deal. And this one did. For me, I don't know how else to, I don't know else how to describe it. It is what it is. But how I am right now is I'm still dealing and still coping and still trying to deal with it. I can watch Next Generation like crazy, and I've seen it over and over and over again. And now since I've seen the series of Picard, I wanted to see more and more of the newer generation that they spawned. Follow the legacy. I'll cry, I'll mourn for the older legacy and grieve. I was more excited to see the possibility of a future, and I wanted to see more of it. Some things in my life I still think are worth it to continue on further. Some things you just don't want to end, but to say all good things come to an end. It sucks. Whenever you stop at one particular journey, another one begins. Paraphrasing things I've heard. There was a line in a movie of He-Man and Masters of the Universe, not the cartoon. Dolph Lundgren in it. Chelsea Fields. And I must believe Robert Duncan McNeil in it. Played Tom Paris in the Star Trek Voyager series decades later. Not to mention Courtney Cox. of Friends fame. Anyway, Chelsea was talking about to Duncan concerning about their term, good journey, good journey. It means every time you end one particular journey, another one begins. I hope you have a good journey on this one. And in a way, Trek reminds me of that. Star Trek leaps for imagination into the beyond. And we as humans here in the real reality are still having enough problems waking up in the morning and dealing with life itself. But we always wanted to be where Star Trek was or is, and it forever will be. Far in the future, away from all the crap going on here. And the problem is we still need to grow up and mature to have our own future generations deal with that. Our thing in our generation right now is we have to deal with what is right now. Deal, cope, and function. Because if we can't do that, I don't know what the hell we're going to be doing for the rest of humanity's existence. Side note, the Starship integration flight test from SpaceX is supposed to be coming in a little more than an hour. They're testing out their mechanized monstrosity equivalent to an Apollo 1, where she's supposed to be testing out the engines and systems and unmanned. So in about another year or two, maybe I'll see this son of a bitch fly towards the moon, land people on it in my lifetime. I've seen it happen after I was born and didn't recognize it. Now later on in my lifetime, I'm going to see the moon populated again and visited. Hell of a thing to live through. And how am I feeling this morning? I want to go back to bed. I slept a little bit, but not much. I'll miss the launch. But that's what YouTube's all about. The excitement of just the testing itself is one thing, but I want to be I want to be awake enough to see the man test when they actually shoot people around the moon again or land them on there. That's something to be awake for. See, I can dream and talk about Star Trek and all its reincarnations and all of its progenies. But I'm seeing real life space flights happening. Commercial space flight is still ongoing by the SpaceX. But what I really, really wanted to see, if we actually do get commercialism up in space where we have satellites out there, we have space stations out there, we have a lunar moon, we have a base up there. I may not live long enough to see Mars, but it'll be nice to see that. But in my lifetime, if I actually see another base, maybe a temporary one, something that would tell me that we are actually still trying to strive forward and not just faltering. This is the 21st century, by the way. We're supposed to be out there. Shit, we should have been out there a long time ago. And if we had kept up with our damn space programs left and right, if we actually had put up a manned base up there, maybe we could have leapfrogged over to Mars. But we still need to learn our lessons more and more about it. We need to. For right now, the mortal coil needs to rest again. Even this early in the morning, I need to go back to bed and sleep. Grieving takes an emotional and physical toll on a person. It reminds me too much that in my youth I can court and I can try being brave about it and try not to feel the emotions, but I had. But I didn't bother to have it drive me crazy to the point where I'm breaking down like crazy. Just, oh, I know I'm using the word too much on this one, but still. To find sanity when it comes down for grieving and emotions. There isn't much on that one. So I don't know about you, zombies. But the sleep deprivation has to be canceled out. Till a few hours from now.